There are people in this world who, despite their eloquent words, somehow make you feel you can't quite trust them. Over the years, through interacting with various people, I've come to notice common traits that make me think, this is someone I need to be careful around. Trust isn't something you build overnight, but it can be lost in an instant. I am Elon Musk. Today, I'd like to share with you the 5 characteristics of untrustworthy people that I've learned from my experiences. Things that might seem trivial or surprising can actually reveal a person's true nature. We cannot live without interacting with others, so it is essential to develop the ability to judge people that you'll end up getting hurt. This is something that directly affects your happiness in life, so please listen carefully until the end. Chapter 1. Those who speak lightly are also light on trust. There are people in this world who talk a lot, but have no substance. They say all the right things, but when it comes down to it, they can't follow through. When I was young, I heard a story about a merchant. He kept saying, "Leave it to me. It'll be fine," over and over again. At first, everyone believed his words. But when the deadline came, the goods didn't arrive. When they called him, he just made excuses. In the end, he lost everyone's trust, and no one would deal with him anymore. Words are easy for anyone to say, but whether you can turn those words into action, that's where a person's true worth lies. From the time I was an apprentice, I was taught, whatever you say, you must see it through. True trust is something you earn by doing what you should do, even without saying a word. It's something others naturally come to respect. One day, while I was cleaning, the manager quietly said to me, "Elon Musk, actions speak louder than words. One action is worth more than 1,000 good words." Those words have stayed with me ever since. Those who talk the talk, but don't walk the walk will eventually pay the price. You may be able to cover it up in the moment, but people's hearts aren't that easily fooled. Trust isn't something you earn with words. It's something you build through actions. If you forget that, no matter how noble your words may be, you're just an empty vessel. One day, a young man joined our factory. He was eager and full of energy, but he would say, "I can do it," and leave it to me about everything. At first, I thought he was reliable. However, as the workload increased, he started falling behind. He couldn't meet the deadlines he had promised, and the preparations were inadequate. But he always smiled and said, "It'll be okay." One day, we faced a situation where we couldn't deliver to a regular customer on time. When I confronted him, "You said you could do it," he replied. "There was an unexpected issue." At that moment, I told him firmly, unexpected issues are part of the job. Anticipating them and taking action is your responsibility. No matter how you try to brush it off with excuses, trust won't come back. No matter how nice you sound, if your actions don't match your words, those words are just empty promises. That young person eventually realized how much their careless words had troubled others, and from there, they gradually started taking responsibility for their words. Trust takes time to build, but it can crumble in an instant. People won't follow you just because of your words. This person says they'll do it, and they really do. It's only when people think that way that they start to trust you, I believe. This is a story from when I was still an apprentice. Every morning, it was my duty to sweep in front of the store. On cold winter mornings, my hands would freeze, and it was honestly tough. But one day, the manager quietly said to me, "Yukinosuk, the way you move your hands is what builds trust." At first, I didn't understand what he meant. But as I continued sweeping every day in silence, the neighbors started saying, "Thank you for keeping it so clean." That's when I finally realized trust is something people naturally feel when they see it. It's not about words, but actions. That's what true trust is. Even after I became president, that never changed. I always told my employees, you don't need to say anything nice. Just do it, and it will be understood. One day, a young employee quietly finished cleaning up the worksite without saying a word. He didn't tell anyone, sweating profusely, just doing it quietly. Later, a client who saw him praised him, saying, "What a great employee." Quiet actions speak louder than flashy words. That's the power that moves people. No matter how many good things you say, if your actions don't match, you won't gain trust. On the other hand, those who do what they should without saying a word are respected by others. That's why, if you want to gain trust, first keep quiet and take action. That's what I've come to realize over the years. Chapter 2. Those who constantly speak ill of others don't gain trust. From ancient times, There have always been people who constantly speak ill of others behind their backs. You may have encountered such people yourself. When I was still an apprentice, there was a craftsman who was particularly harsh in his speech. He would constantly criticize his fellow workers. "He's no good. Look at his sloppy work." He would say these things loud enough for everyone to hear, making the atmosphere unpleasant. At first, I thought, maybe he has a point, but as I observed him more closely, I realized he was just all talk. He would complain constantly, but when it came time to do the work himself, he was slow and careless. Yet, he's good at finding faults in others, but he's insensitive to his own shortcomings. People like that end up not being trusted by anyone. At first, the people around him would listen to him, but gradually they started to distance themselves from him. One day, when that craftsman was criticizing a new young employee, I couldn't help but say, "Stop talking about others and look at your own hands." People who only speak ill of others may seem righteous on the surface, but in reality, they are just trying to hide their own dissatisfaction and inferiority by putting others down to protect themselves. The reason why people who speak ill of others are not trusted is because sincerity is lacking. Gossiping about others is usually done behind their backs, which makes others think, "You must be saying the same things about me behind my back." When I was young, I once heard a veteran worker at a construction site constantly criticizing his junior colleagues. These young people nowadays can't even greet properly. They have no guts and no manners. But I saw that junior quietly tidying up the veteran's belongings without saying a word and helping him when he was in trouble. After learning that, my perspective changed. The veteran who was gossiping seemed narrow-minded. A truly trustworthy person doesn't judge others with words, but by their actions. They quietly find the good in others and acknowledge it. Seeing that, people think, "I want to follow this person." Those who only speak ill of others eventually push people away. No matter how capable they are, if they lack human charm, trust doesn't accumulate. Even after I became president, I saw this often. Employees who only gossip about others stand out at first. They say things that sound good, try to ingratiate themselves with superiors. But such people quickly reveal their true colors. They are cold to subordinates and speak harshly. No one will open their heart to such a person. One day, after a meeting, an employee came to me and said, and confided, "I'm having trouble with A's behavior." Upon hearing the details, it turned out they had been spreading rumors behind his back. At that moment, I said, "There's no need to listen to those who speak ill of others. What truly matters is the facts you see with your own eyes." The employee nodded in relief and left. If you let gossip sway your heart, you lose sight of the truth. What's important is your own beliefs and seeing people with your own eyes, not others' evaluations. The words you speak reveal your heart. Instead of speaking ill of others, focus on their good qualities and share them. That will also build your own trust. I still believe that today. To add one more thing, the people who constantly speak ill of others are the ones who fear being spoken of in the same way by others. Truly strong people have no need to belittle others. Find the good in others and praise them. That's how people who are in trust behave, I think. Chapter 3. People who get angry easily have an unstable mind. Anger is one of the emotions that make us human. However, people who show their anger immediately are proof that their inner world is still unstable. When I was young, I met the owner of a store. He would raise his voice at the slightest thing that didn't suit him. "Why can't you do this? Are you an idiot?" The employees were all scared and kept watching his face. At first, I thought, he's strict, but he must be serious about his work. But gradually, I realized that he was just lacking confidence. People who get angry easily often direct their anger at others, but in reality, they are trying to hide their own anxiety and impatience. That shop owner blamed everything that didn't go his way on others, but the real cause was that he couldn't control his own emotions. Years after I left that store, I heard rumors that the employees had quit one after another, and the customers had also left. People gather in places where they feel safe. No one stays long in a place where sparks of anger are flying everywhere. Getting angry quickly may seem like having a strong sense of justice, but I think it's a sign of an immature heart. When I first started managing the business, there was an employee who would get irritated over little things and raise his voice easily. For example, if there was a mistake on an invoice, he'd shout, "Who made this mistake?" The younger employees would shrink back, and no one would dare to approach him. One day, I quietly told that employee, "It's easy to get angry, but who benefits from that? What's truly important is finding the right words to convey your message. Simply getting angry doesn't reach people's hearts. Instead, it creates a wall and destroys trust. Anger can sometimes motivate someone, but that's only short-term. When someone acts out of fear, they don't truly trust you." That employee at first didn't listen, but one day, a junior employee told them, "I'm so scared of getting scolded that I can't focus on my work." That's when they first reflected on their own attitude. From there, they gradually changed. Instead of yelling, they started asking questions. As a result, the atmosphere around them became more relaxed, and their evaluation naturally improved. Suppressing anger isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It means not being swayed by your emotions and being able to give others a sense of security that I believe are truly trustworthy. The difference between someone who lashes out in anger and someone who holds back and empathizes with others grows into a significant difference in trust over time. Among the people I've observed, those who are truly trustworthy never raise their voices, no matter how angry they may be. They take a moment to breathe, listen carefully to the other person's perspective, and then calmly express their own opinion. One day, a young manager came to me and said, "I'm frustrated because my subordinate made a mistake. What should I do?" I replied, "Well, it's precisely when mistakes happen that one's true character is tested. Yelling is easy, but it doesn't necessarily help the other person grow. Rather, it's the person who, without saying anything, makes others feel that this person is watching over me, who, in the long run, I believe that's what builds trust in the long run. Instead of venting your emotions, having the mindset of wanting the other person to grow, that's what I think a true leader is." I think the same applies to family life. When a child makes a mistake, do you immediately yell at them, or do you stay silent, accept it, and talk about it later? That difference is what builds trust. It's difficult to hold back anger, but only those who can endure that moment can truly. I think that's what it means to truly be a leader. Chapter 4. You can't entrust important tasks to someone who doesn't take responsibility. When I was young, I witnessed a scene at work that I still can't forget. A mistake was made, and it caused trouble for an important client. At that time, one of the people involved said, "It wasn't my fault. The instructions were unclear," and shifted the blame onto someone else. Everyone present listened in silence, but I'm sure they were thinking, "We can't trust this person with anything." Taking responsibility isn't about protecting yourself, it's about eroding your own trustworthiness. Mistakes happen to everyone. No one is perfect. But it's your attitude afterward that determines everything. "I'm sorry, it was my judgment error." Just those words alone make others think, that's the right thing to say. On the other hand, those who keep making excuses are thought of as, "Here we go again," and gradually lose the trust of others. I've witnessed such situations many times, and I've come to believe firmly. People who have the courage to take responsibility are the ones who are trusted. Taking responsibility doesn't mean losing out. Rather, it's the people who can do that who others can trust to do their work. I believe that it's not a single mistake, but the attitude afterward that shows a person's true character. One day, a defect was found in a product at the factory. Since it had already been sent to the client, I was sweating bullets. I immediately called the responsible supervisor and asked for an explanation. He replied, "I think it's the fault of the team that assembled the parts," without even bothering to check properly, trying to shift the blame elsewhere. I said, "Enough of that. Let's go apologize to the client first. We'll talk about it later." In the end, the cause was that the supervisor himself had neglected to check properly. Later, when this became clear, he was also disappointed, but the trust with the client had already been damaged. Not all failures can be prevented. However, those who can say, "It was my fault," will always be given another chance. Those who only think about protecting themselves, even if they are talented, cannot be relied upon in critical situations. I often told my employees, don't run away from responsibility. There's no growth in running away. Responsibility is like a burden. At first, it feels heavy, but carrying it strengthens your legs. Only those who understand its weight can truly lead others. The attitude of taking responsibility, even if it leads to failure, touches the hearts of those around you. That's what builds the foundation of trust, and I believe in that. Even after I became president, I've observed the difference between those who face responsibility and those who flee from it. There was a mid-level employee who was assigned a new project. At first, things were going smoothly, but then a problem arose, and the plan went off track. At that point, he came to me and said, "It's all my fault for underestimating the situation. Please let me try again." Hearing those words, I immediately wanted to entrust him with more responsibilities. On the other hand, there were also those who blamed others for everything. Whenever something went wrong, they would make excuses like, "My subordinates didn't follow instructions," or "It was the subcontractor's mistake." Over time, those around them began to say, "I don't want to work with that person." Responsibility is also an opportunity to earn trust. If you run away from it, you lose it. If you accept it, it builds up. That might be the most important lesson I've learned in this business world. To become someone others can trust to handle things, you must first be willing to take responsibility for your own mistakes. Those who have that resolve will be supported by others, even if they fail at first. It's not about blaming failures. It's about observing one's attitude. I've made countless mistakes myself, but each time, I've said, "It's my responsibility." That one phrase is the first step toward trust. If you forget that, you won't be entrusted with important tasks. Chapter 5. People who change their attitude depending on the person lack sincerity. When I was an apprentice, I often saw this kind of behavior. It was someone who was humble towards superiors but rude to subordinates. A certain foreman was exactly like that. In front of regular customers, he would smile broadly and say, "Thank you for your continued patronage." But as soon as he turned around, he would shout at the young apprentices, "Hey, hurry up. Stop dawdling." At that moment, I remember feeling a chill run down my spine. Does this person truly mean it when they show respect? I believe sincerity shouldn't change depending on who you're with. Treating everyone with the same attitude, regardless of their position, is what makes a person genuine, in my opinion. When I was young and working as a cleaner, there was an old man who would greet me every morning with a cheerful good morning. He always showed the same smile to everyone. What a kind person, I thought naturally, not because of his words, but because of his consistent attitude. People who change their attitude depending on the person may seem to be unaware of it, but others notice it. Once someone thinks, "This person has a double standard," that impression is hard to shake. Regaining trust isn't easy. That's why I believe sincerity should shine through in our daily actions. There was once a salesperson who was humble and polite to his superiors, but arrogant, and would say things like, "What's that supposed to mean?" or "Do it properly," in a commanding tone. I observed this and thought to myself, this person has a different side to them. The salesperson found themselves in trouble when a new junior employee became frustrated with their attitude and refused to cooperate. "It's because you speak that way that the work isn't getting done," the junior employee reported to their superior, and the salesperson's evaluation dropped. A person's true nature is revealed by how they treat those in a weaker position. Trying to put on a good front for superiors while being rude to subordinates will never earn genuine trust. Those who change their attitude depending on their position lack sincerity. On the other hand, those who treat everyone with the same attitude naturally gain trust. What I've always said is, become someone who can bow to anyone with the same humility. Those who can do that will never see their evaluations decline over time. Truly honest people don't decide their attitude based on the other person. They decide based on their own principles. It's that stance that those around them feel at ease and follow them. People reveal their true selves in places where they think no one is watching. When I was still a young apprentice, I once saw the store manager handling merchandise carelessly in the back of the store early in the morning when no one else was there. He always smiled and spoke nicely to customers, but seeing that, I thought, this person can't be trusted. On the other hand, those who maintain the same polite attitude even when no one is watching naturally earn my respect. As the old saying goes, sincerity lies in the details, and I believe this applies directly to one's attitude. Those who change their attitude depending on the person eventually lose trust. Even if they seem to be getting by for a while, the difference becomes evident over time. What's important is to have a consistent principle within oneself. No matter who you're dealing with, treat everyone with unwavering respect. Those who can do that are the ones who ultimately win people's hearts. I have always strived to be that way. Sincerity is not something you change depending on the person or the situation. It is something that naturally emanates from your way of life. Moreover, treating others with sincerity eventually comes back to you. I can trust this person. I can talk to this person about anything. To be seen that way, you must maintain the same attitude everywhere and toward everyone. How did you find this? I shared Elon Musk's characteristics of unreliable people. I hope this lesson helps improve your relationships and enrich your life. If today's talk provided new insights or motivation for your life, please write 222 in the comments section. If you have any suggestions for improvement or feedback, please write 4. Liking the video and subscribing to the channel would be a great encouragement, so please consider doing so. We will continue to share the words of various great figures in the future, so please turn on notifications to ensure you don't miss the next episode. Thank you very much for watching today.